guys, welcome back to my channel, Simone here. So today I'm going to be filming my 5-star reviews of 2017 part 1, and this is basically my favourite books of last year. I have 14 books to talk about in today's video, so let's get started. I will also link the playlist of my end of year videos down below, so go and check them out if you'd like to know what other books I read last year. But this, like I said, is going to be my favourites, my 5 stars. So the first book that I gave a 5-star to is The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas, and then this is the kind of 5 novellas in the Throne of Glass series, which I have not read any of the Throne of Glass books. I own the first 3, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight and Heir of Fire? Yeah, and Heir of Fire. I haven't read any of the full novels. I decided to start with Assassin's Blade, which is the novellas, like I said, because Laura from Two Paper Girls basically said that's what she was doing, and I thought it kind of made sense to kind of get some background before I started. And I'm really glad I did. I feel like I know the world a little bit more than I would have otherwise, and I really enjoyed the first book in the series, like the prequel. So yeah, looking forward. I really need to read Throne of Glass now. Like, it's on my to-do list very soon, but yeah, definitely going to get to that. The second book that I loved last year was The Silkworm by Robert Galbraith, also known as J.K. Rowling, and this is the second book in the Cormoran Strike series. And I loved the Cormoran Strike series in general. I read The Cuckoo's Calling last year, maybe the year before, and absolutely adored it. This one is it's just a really great continuation. I also now have the third book up there somewhere, Fear of Evil, that's the one, and I cannot wait to read that one. This one was great. This basically is following Cormoran Strike, who, if you don't know who Cormoran Strike is, he is a private detective who, along with his assistant, I guess, Robin, he basically solves crimes, and in this one it's following a novelist called Owen Quinn who's gone missing, and his wife has hired Cormoran to find out where he is. And the difference being is that Owen Quinn has just written a manuscript for a novel where he basically outs everybody in his world, and so there are a lot of people that might want him dead or might want to shut him up basically. And it's about that. So like I said, this is wonderful. I love Cormoran Strike in general as a person. I love Robin as well, she's amazing. Yeah, I really enjoyed this series, and cannot wait to read the third one. Looking for JJ by Anne Cassidy, and this was a book that I got recommended by Hannah Tay, who I will link her channel below. But she was talking about Anne Cassidy books and how much she loved them, and this book was fantastic. This book follows a girl who is just coming out of prison because when she was a child she was involved in the death of her best friend, and she now has come out of prison with a new identity, and she's trying to start a new life, but she's kind of looking over her shoulder all the time, worried that somebody is going to figure out who she is and what she did. This is set on 2 different timelines. So you have the first one, which is the leading up to the death of her friend, and being a child, and kind of the things that happened and what caused it all to happen in the first place. And then the second perspective is of her now she's out of prison, and kind of the new life that she's trying to lead. And like I said, this was really great, really gripping, but it is one of those books where I struggled with it because the idea of child killers is really kind of disturbing and hard to think about, but I did really enjoy this. I would recommend it, and I definitely want to read more Anne Cassidy now. Up next is a really interesting and important book, and that is If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo. I loved this book. This basically follows a new girl at the school called Amanda Hardy, and she has a secret, and that secret is that she used to be known as Andrew at her old school, and she is transgender. And this basically follows her when she first falls in love, and it's about her trying to come to terms with the fact, like, should she say something, when should she say something, is everybody going to find out, because she kind of used this new school as a new start because nobody knew her and nobody knew who she used to be. And now she kind of is trying to sort of juggle those things and figure out who she is herself as well. This was brilliant. I have only read one other transgender book, as far as I know, before, and I just feel like it's really important for people to feel like they are represented in books, and yeah, this was brilliant. I again can't talk about the representation too much because obviously I don't have the kind of inside knowledge of what it's like to be transgender, but from my perspective at least, it was interesting to learn things that I didn't know before, and just different perspectives of people, I guess. So yeah, I really liked this one. It was amazing. Up next is my first ever Morgan Matson book, and I've been hearing about her writing for ages and for some reason had just never picked one up until now, and this was Amy and Roger's Epic Detour. This follows a girl whose father dies and her mother decides to move her and her brother across the country, but in order for that to happen she has to drive the car from one side of the states to the other, and ever since her father died she's not been in a car, so she's really struggled with that. So then her mother ropes in a family friend to drive her from there because he's going that way anyway, and it's about the kind of journey that they have and their relationship, and this was amazing. This had like playlists on the beginning of each section, like about the songs that they listened to, and it just really was interesting because I felt like you were kind of there in the journey. I really loved hearing about kind of Amy's life and how she felt, and it was really difficult because she kind of blamed herself in part for her father's death, and that was a really difficult thing to read about, but I thought it was really well done. I also liked the fact that the relationship is not like, the relationship is not what saves the day. It's not like that thing where it's like the boy comes along and saves everything. Like, it wasn't like that. I felt like it was really kind of casual, and I don't know, like he let her kind of grieve in the way that she needed to, and yeah, I loved this. I thought it was amazing. I love the idea of road trips in books, so I definitely want to read more of those. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know. Yeah, really enjoyed this book, and I'm definitely going to read more Morgan Matson now because she's definitely impressed me. Next up is Daddy's Girls by Tasmina Perry, and this was a book that I wasn't sure if I was going to like. I decided to read it because it had been on my shelf for ages, and it was one of those books that I decided to unhaul if I didn't read it, basically. And I read it, and I'm really glad I did read it and not just unhauled it because I, you know, thought it was great. It basically follows these 4 girls who are sisters, and they all have a very difficult relationship with their father in differing ways. They're all very different girls in general, and I think they struggle with kind of knowing where their place is. Anyway, their father is murdered, and they are all suspects in his murder because they all, like I said, they've all got something that has been an issue with him, and it's about them kind of banding together to figure out firstly what has actually happened, and secondly like their feelings that he's dead and kind of how they feel about that and how their relationships are going to change now. And yeah, I really loved this. This was very much like a family drama, and it reminded me of a Danielle Steele book, and like you probably all know, I love Danielle Steele so much. So yeah, definitely one I would recommend. I think that Tasmina Perry has a way of writing that just draws you in and makes you care about all the characters, even though there are quite a few of them. So yeah, and I didn't see what happened coming, so yeah, really glad I read this, and definitely an intriguing book that I really had to think about afterwards. The next one is a completely different book to basically anything else I've read this year, and that was If You Were the Only Girl by Anne Bennett. And this is a kind of wartime story set in around the Second World War. This follows a girl named Lucy whose father dies, and she is forced to take a job as a scullery maid at a local kind of big posh house, basically. And she starts to have some kind of relationship with the oldest son, or the remaining son of the family, because basically the family that she's gone to work for, 3 of the 4 sons have been killed in the war, and so it's kind of the family still are trying to kind of get over that and deal with it. And then obviously, like I say, Lucy starts to fall in love with the son that's remaining, and it's about that relationship, and it's about that kind of dynamic and how that can work. And I loved this. Like I said, I do really enjoy reading books about the Second World War, and I always find that like personal character pieces are just my favourite, so really loved this. Lucy was an amazing character. She really kind of had strength, but also she was not afraid to kind of show her weaknesses as well, which I thought was amazing. And the love interest Clive in this was just dreamy. So yeah, really liked this one, definitely recommend. Up next is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, and I adore Gillian Flynn and her writing. Gone Girl was one of my favourite books, and then I really did not like Sharp Objects. So I think that Dark Places was one of the only books that I've ever audibly gasped at the ending of. If you don't know what this book is about, it follows a girl whose brother is found guilty of murdering her family, basically. And when she was younger, she testified against her brother and said that it was him that murdered them. Anyway, now she's come to a group that don't believe that her brother actually murdered the family, and she's now kind of doubting whether what happened. She's trying to find out what really happened and the truth. And this was just thrilling. The ending of this, like the answer to all the questions, was just so shocking. I did not see it coming. Like I said, I audibly gasped. My sister was sat on the sofa and I was reading this, and I literally was sat there like, I've just got like 20 pages left, just let me finish the book and then I'm all yours. And as I was reading, I just went, and I could not believe it. I didn't see it coming. Like I said, it all made sense. Like, it was one of those moments where it's like, eureka, totally made sense. Did not see it coming at all though, and I don't know how, but it was great. And oh my goodness me, I loved it. I think the characters, I think the thing that Gillian Flynn is really good at doing is writing characters that you don't like, but you still kind of root for and you're not really sure why. The main character in this was definitely that kind of character. She was not a likeable person, but for some reason I kind of still wanted her to find the answer, and I really wanted her to kind of be successful in it. So yeah, I'm not sure how she manages to do that, but she definitely did, and I definitely loved it. The next book I want to talk about is The Art of Being Normal by Lisa Williamson, and again, this was one of those books that really opened my eyes. This follows a boy named David who really wants to be a girl and feels like a girl on the inside, but for some reason is in the body of a male. And in the school cafeteria one day, David is being bullied by the school bully because they basically have found his diary, which is where he's kind of addressed those things that he is feeling. And then this invisible guy that nobody really knows about or knows that much about, called Leo, stands up for him. And Leo has secrets of his own, and he just doesn't really want to have friends. Like, he doesn't want to be involved with people because he doesn't want anyone to find out. And then obviously then David and Leo then become they become friends because of this sort of him standing up for him. And it's a brilliant story. I did feel like it was a little bit like, oh, of course, like quite obvious, but it didn't take away from the story for me. I found it to be very, very fascinating, totally like believable and understandable, and just heartwarming. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it, and I think that it's, like I said, it's definitely a very important read, and I'm glad that it's in the world for people to read. Next up, we have my favourite book of 2017. Are you ready? Obviously. It's Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I adored this book. I am not somebody who usually enjoys fantasy books. Even if it's YA, I'm just not a big fantasy person generally. Like, I do like some fantasy, but then sometimes they just go completely over my head and I just don't understand them. This was amazing. This follows 6 outcasts who are all kind of criminals in some way, who all have to band together to pull off this impossible heist. And things happen that they're not expecting, and alliances are made, and there are amazing relationships in this. Inez's my favourite person in the entire world. I think she's so amazing. She's such a kick-ass woman who's like, do you know what? I will do what I want to do and you will not tell me what to do. And I bloody loved this book. It was amazing. I actually bought this for my work colleague and friend. She's both. I bought this for her for Christmas because I really wanted to talk to someone about it, and so she's reading it at the minute, so I can't wait for her to finish it so I can read it, or like talk to her about it, should I say. I really, really want to read Crooked Kingdom, and I'm kind of scared to though, because this was so good. I don't want it to like ruin my like good thoughts about it. Let me know, shall I read Crooked Kingdom soon, or shall I leave it for a little while? Yeah, I absolutely adored this. Leigh Bardugo, is a bloody genius, and oh, this was so good. Then we have a book that was very, very difficult for me to read and is going to be even more difficult for me to talk about, but it is Into the Darkest Corner by Elizabeth Haynes, and this book made me feel physically sick when I was reading it because of my anxiety. Now, again, I've talked about my anxiety before, but reading this book, because it has so many features of mental health and anxiety and things in it, it really just resonated with me, and I think that's why I found it difficult to read, because it was just so like true to life. This follows our main character who suffers. It's kind of in two perspectives. It's written from when she met her boyfriend and like at the time of that and how excited she was to have met him and kind of that sort of thing. But it's also written from the perspective of her now, and she suffers from extreme OCD and anxiety because basically she was in a domestic abuse relationship, and he was very controlling, he was very physically abusive to her, and he was also kind of like bordering on stalking. Like, he would kind of come into her house and move things and do things like that, and because of that she is now suffering from OCD, because she kind of thinks things have changed and things have moved, and she's worried that she's going to be hurt, and it's that kind of situation, and it's about her kind of trying to get over the things that she's been through and trying to move forward from it. And oh my goodness me, this was, like I said, I've never been hit by a book so much before. It was like it had smacked me around the face. It was so hard to read. It made me feel, like I said, physically sick. It was brilliant, but also just heartbreaking, and it just really resonated with me, because a lot of the things that she was feeling I felt before, not in terms of physical abuse or anything like that, in terms of the anxiety side of things. I totally get it. I get how she was feeling. I completely empathise with her, and I just think that Elizabeth Haynes has either been through something very, very difficult in her life, and in which case I feel completely sorry for her, or she just has this way of being able to explain it, and either way, I think she's a wonderful human, and I want to read more of her things. I don't know if she has anything else that she's written, but I definitely will read it. Like I said, it just made me feel sick, but I think that it was like in a good way, like in terms of like in a empathetic and also like emotional way, as opposed to like, oh, it made me feel sick because it was gross. It wasn't like that. It was just so on the nail. We now have Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and as you may know, Rainbow Rowell is one of my favourite authors, and I love her young adult stuff. I read Fangirl by her maybe a couple of years ago and thought it was one of the best books I've ever read, and Carry On is basically a companion novel, I guess, to that. Basically, in Fangirl, if you don't know, it follows a girl who writes fan fiction about the Simon Snow series, which is kind of like a similar series to Harry Potter. Carry On is the first book in the Simon Snow fan fiction that Kath writes, I believe. So basically, you're reading fan fiction about a series that you don't know what it is. And it basically follows Baz and Simon, who, Simon is kind of like Harry Potter and Baz is kind of like Draco Malfoy, I guess. And that's the comparison. And it's about, there's vampires, and it's about them defeating the kind of Voldemort creature, you know, person. There is a lot of similarities, which I think is one of the reasons why I loved it so much, because I do obviously love Harry Potter so much. And there was something about this that just made me really happy when I was reading it. I wouldn't say this was kind of like earth-shatteringly good, but it was to the point where I was just enjoying it, and I think that's all you need really when you're reading a book. Like, I just was loving it, and I was having fun and enjoying myself. So yeah, that's definitely a reason to carry on reading. I kind of hope she does more of them, but I don't think she will. But yeah, I loved it. I thought it was amazing. Can't wait to read more Rainbow Rowell in the future. Then, strangely enough, I'm not doing these in any order. I'm just doing them in the order that my Goodreads tells me I read them. And the next book is The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, which is the first book in the Cormoran Strike series that I talked about the second book earlier. I will talk about this a little bit. Obviously, I've kind of already said what it is, but the first book follows a model who, well, it's about Cormoran Strike investigating the death of a model who apparently committed suicide by jumping off of her balcony, but her brother has hired Cormoran Strike because he thinks that she didn't kill her, that she didn't kill herself, that she was murdered. And it's kind of about that story, and again, there's a big twist at the end which I didn't see coming. Like I said, I love Cormoran Strike in general. I think it's a great series, and the first one was amazing, the second one was amazing, and I can't wait to read the third. And then the final book that I'm going to talk about today was 44 Charles Street by Danielle Steel. As I mentioned earlier, I love Danielle Steel's writing. I think she's amazing. She's very good at researching her books, and every book she writes is completely different, but it's so well researched that it still feels like a Danielle Steel book, even though the topic is completely different. This follows 4 main characters. Basically the main character that starts from the book is splitting up with her boyfriend, and that means they have to sell their house, and basically she's splitting the house and the business down the middle. So she is buying him out of the house so that she can move into it. However, this house is a 4-bedroomed, like, massive house, and she knows that she can't live there by herself. 1, because she can't afford the rent, and 2, because she feels like she'll just, like, be on her own in this massive house and doesn't want to do that. So she brings in 3 different lodgers, and there is a man who is kind of fighting for custody of his son. He's an architect, and he's really interesting. Then you have a girl who is trying to find a man, like she's trying to find dates and things. She's a student, I believe, I can't completely remember. And then the third one is an old lady, like an older lady who is a famous chef, and obviously she starts doing the cooking and stuff. This is amazing. There are so many different characters in this. Again, like I said, Danielle Steel has this way of having different characters and you still care about them all. The only thing I will say about this one is there is quite a big shocking twist in this that I did not see coming, but was probably, like, should have come with a trigger warning, let's just say, if you have, like, a problem with like abuse, domestic abuse, and violence and drugs, I guess. Yeah, like I said though, this was amazing. When I read the twist, I was just like, what? Because my nan gave me this book. She reads Danielle Steel's books and gives them all to me when she's finished, and I remember ringing her after this and being like, why didn't you tell me? This was heartbreaking. I don't understand why you didn't warn me. And she was like, I know, now you know how I felt when I read it. So yeah, amazing. I love Danielle Steel. I think she's great. 44 Charles Street is one of my favourites of hers so far, and yeah, I can't wait to read more. So that is my first part of my 5-star reads, my favourite reads of 2017. I hope you liked this video. Give this a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and put the little notification bell on so that you don't miss out when I upload my last one, which will be part 2 of this video, and any other videos that I upload. I'll speak to you later, guys. Bye!